Morning, guys. In this video we're going to talk about the average value function. It's the last topic we need to cover for chapter 6. I mentioned it briefly last week in class, but wanted to give it a little more time and development here. So first we'll just start by defining the new formula for us, which says that the average value of an integrable function some function f of x on a closed interval from a to b is equal to the following formula. The average value will be equal to 1 divided by the length of the interval times the integral from a to b of that function. So here's our new formula for the day. This is a formula that you will need to have memorized. Hopefully it's pretty simple. All we're saying is the average value of a given function f of x on a closed interval is equal to the integral of that function divided by the length of that interval, right? And this hopefully is somewhat intuitive. We know that the integral from a to b of f of x corresponds exactly to the area under that curve, right? And what we're saying here is that if I simply divide by the length, I'll get the average value. You could think of the average value as something like the height of, the height of the rectangle with the same area. Right, if we were to draw a rectangle that has the same area, that is our average value. So that may have been a little confusing or not, I don't know. But basically, the area under the curve, if we divide the length out, this makes sense mostly for a rectangle. It's really easy, right? Base times height. If we divide the base out from the area, we get the height. The height being the function value that is averaged across all the other function values. So, long story short, the average value of any given function on a closed interval is equal to 1 over b minus a times the integral from b minus a of that function. Definitely one of the formulas that you'll need to have memorized for your AP exam. Let's see it in practice on a simple example. For example, let's find the average value of the sine function. On the interval from 0 to pi. So, it's very straightforward. The average value is equal to 1 divided by the length of the interval. Right, here's a and b. We want to do b minus a times the integral from a to b of the function that we're interested in, sine of x. So this would be 1 over pi times the antiderivative of sine, which is negative cosine, evaluated at 0 and pi. You could plug in the values here. We'd get 1 over pi times negative cosine of pi. Cosine of pi is negative 1, so negative 1 minus cosine at 0 is positive 1 So we want to subtract, this is a little awkward here, negative cosine of 0. So we want to subtract negative 1. And that gives us 1 over pi times positive 1 plus 1. In other words, 1 over pi times 2, or 2 over pi. If you wanted to check that in your calculator, figure out what that is as a decimal. Here we have the whole integral shown, so 1 over pi times the integral from 0 to pi of sine x. And we get a decimal of 0.637. So the average value of the sine function from 0 to pi is 0.637.